Takes a while. Thank you all for having me. This has been, again, another incredible trip journey down here. It's just an incredible place. And I want to share with you today a little bit about the science of how wonderful this is, and in relationship to your biological clocks in harmony with nature's circadian rhythms. And but first I want to ask you a question. Like how many of you either have the experience or know someone who has the experience where life is a struggle? How many feel like they feel exhausted at the end of the day? This doesn't count this week here because I get it, that this is like an exhausting week. So let's check this week off the list. But in your regular life, do you feel like life's a struggle? Do you feel like you are exhausted at the end of the day? Do you feel like you can't make it without that cup of coffee? You can't make it without that chocolate in the afternoon, those chips, or that little snack, or that Starbucks, or you need a glass of wine to sedate yourself at night because life has been such a busy, stressful experience. How many of you actually feel like your meditation is your stress reliever? That if you didn't meditate, you'd feel just completely out of control. Like your meditation was the one thing that you do to help you feel sane again in your skin. And you probably know that meditation has incredible stress-reducing techniques, but that's not what it was for. Meditation wasn't designed as a stress reduction technique. It's a spiritual technique to refine this human instrument, to thin the veil between the physical and the spiritual, and to access something really real and take that risk to let that out and be vulnerable and even powerful. But we all use meditation, unfortunately, many times as that stress reducer. When you have that kind of an experience, your life is a struggle. Now you look out your window at home and you see the deer out there. They're not like having to meditate at the end of the day. They don't need a cup of coffee to get through the day. They're chilling the whole time. But we have this exhaustion that we have to recover from on the weekend, or recover from, and life becomes a struggle. And there's good science behind the damage that incurs. There's actually DNA damage that occurs during the day. There's less damage in the morning and more damage in the afternoon. And as we get older, we have more of that DNA damage. And that DNA damage comes from mostly from the production of energy. The mitochondria, you've all heard of mitochondrial energy. Everybody wants to boost mitochondria, give you more energy, all these different pills and supplements you can take to boost your mitochondria, but it's not really the mitochondria lack that's the problem. It's the inability to get rid of the waste from the mitochondrial energy that you produce. When you make nuclear energy, the issue is what? The nuclear waste. What do you do with it? In your body, you're producing, in a sense, a kind of nuclear energy, and there's waste products that you have to get rid of. But if you're not getting rid of those, that causes accelerated aging, unnecessary aging factors. And every day, at the end of the day, you accumulate more of those unnecessary aging factors. And you feel it, because you feel at the end of the day, I gotta meditate just to feel sane again. You're experiencing that. Nobel Prize winning research by Elizabeth Blackburn, who did research on the telomeres, which are the protective caps of your DNA. She found that when you're stressed out, your telomeres, these protective caps, get shorter. And when you do yoga and breathing and meditation and chanting, which is what we do here, we see in one study a 30% increase in the telomerase, which is the lengthening enzyme of your telomeres, and a 43% increase of the telomerase in another study with chanting. So we have really good science that what's happening here is actually setting the tone for mitigating some of that DNA damage. which is really good when we're here, but then we leave here, like I'm leaving tomorrow, and we're leaving tomorrow, and then we go back into the world, where it feels like we're going upstream against the current. And how do we get back into that river downstream headed to the ocean? That's what we want to do, right? All rivers lead to the ocean. That's what we want to have in our life. Well, that happens when you have your biological clocks and your circadian rhythms in harmony and in sync with those rhythms. That's kind of the goal. I had my first experience of this. I'll tell you a quick story. When I was probably in the early 1980s, I was in chiropractic college, and I was taking an acupuncture course, and I heard the word Ayurveda for the first time. I was like, what? There's this ancient system of medicine from India where people live to be 150 years old, and they do these deep detoxification therapies called Kaya Kalpa, and their hair falls, their teeth, their skin peels, and their teeth fall out, and they grow new hair and new teeth. And I was like, new hair? Like, where do I go to get that? So didn't turn out to be as hair growing as we thought, right? But many other benefits. So I went to my first lecture on Ayurveda meditation, and afterwards, and I'm sort of actually very shy, and I rarely ever go up and talk to someone after a lecture. I'm just sort of like actually introverted mostly. And I asked this guy, I said, he was an Ayurvedic Indian man, and I said, I'm wondering if all this Ayurvedic and meditation stuff, like I'm training for an Ironman, and I wonder if all this meditation, Ayurveda would say it's good or bad. And he looked at me and he said, what is that? And I said, well, it's 2.5 miles swim in the ocean and 112-mile bike ride and a 26-mile run. And he looked at me and he said, why do you do that? And I had no idea. I had no answer. So I'm like trying to find some logical, smart thing to say. I had nothing. And he looked at me like I was an idiot, and he said, do you meditate? And I was like, yes. I was like so happy to have some positive thing to say. And he said, do you sleep when you meditate? I said, deeply. It's great. I have the best sleep. I meditate and I just conk out. I wake up. I feel great. And again, he looked at me like I was sort of an idiot and said, meditation is a different state of consciousness than sleep. Sleep, you're out. Meditation, you're supposed to be restfully alert. You're exhausted. And I was like, oh, so all this is bad at Ayurveda? And he said, you're exhausted. And I said, well, does that mean if I can meditate and not fall asleep, all this stuff I'm doing can be okay? And he was like, next, yes, please go out of, just stop, you know. But for me, that was like, oh, I'm exhausted. I can't stay awake in my meditation. So I started training less and meditating more. I started going away on to meditation retreats on the weekends. I went to like 4 of them. Ended up going to a 2-week meditation retreat where all I did was yoga, breathe, meditate. We were in the forest. It was beautiful. I just wanted to go for a run, but they said, you're not allowed. So I had to like walk. And then, so it was just like yoga, breathe, meditate, yoga all day, every day, rounds of yoga, breathing, meditation. And I came back from that retreat and something happened to me. I had a sort of runner's high zoned peak experience that lasted for me for 3 months. Not just when I was exercising, but in all aspects. I had a level of capacity that I never knew I had. Like I was like shot out of a cannon. Many of my triathlon buddies thought I was on steroids because I started competing and winning medals, which I would never have done before. A lot of them learned how to meditate because they couldn't keep up with me. In my Ayurvedic in my clinic, in my chiropractic, I was doing my internship at that time. I was just like able to handle so much more. My grades went, everything just changed for 3 months, and then it disappeared. Gone. Damn. And so I was like so fascinated by this zone peak experience where your best race is your easiest race, and how meditation, getting the deep rest that I need, gave me this experience. Somehow it aligned my biological clocks with nature's circadian rhythms, and I was in what I call the eye of the storm. Before, my life I was living in the winds of the storm, dodging dangerous things flying around out there in the winds of the storm, Winnebagos and tree trunks and bad things that can take you out. But I somehow slipped into this silent center. And I was, and one of my two favorite Vedic sayings as a result of that experience was do less and accomplish more, which I was doing. And then I totally tasted do nothing and accomplish everything. I felt like I wasn't doing anything. And that, I was hooked. I mean, I didn't get the hair back, but I got everything else. And I was completely hooked. And that sent me to India and ended up doing research on nose breathing and mouth breathing. But all of that really led me down to the road of really understanding what Ayurveda was about, is creating a life that is in harmony with the rhythms of nature. So you're not going upstream. Life is not a struggle. You're not exhausted at the end of the day. And when the lake is really calm and still, the body can see what's down there. Recognize problems as problems and support a natural health, natural spontaneous healing response. And the more that you yoga, meditate, breathe, the more that you dip the cloth in the dye of that silence, and that eye of the storm becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. And that is what I want to talk about today, is something very simple, but it was really the thing that sort of blew me away, was how simply changing your lifestyle can have such a dramatic effect on how you feel. One, the meditation, getting the rest that I need. But also, I had another experience. When 1984, I went for my first Ayurvedic consultation, and the doctor looked at me, and the nurse took my blood pressure, and she said, "John, you have high blood pressure." I was like, not possible. I was living in a meditation community. I was exercising, meditating twice a day, long meditations. And she said, "I'm really sorry, but you have high blood pressure." I just couldn't believe it. So the doctor comes in, an Indian man, and he looks at me and he takes my pulse and he says, "What do you have for lunch?" And I said, "Well, I just started my practice and I have a busy practice and I'm just trying to figure out how to stay on time, and lunch comes around and I'm behind and I don't have time to go out and eat anything. And my boss was really into these little chocolate truffles, so I got into these little chocolate truffles too. So I'd pop a few of those, and that was my lunch, and I go into the afternoon." And I felt like all of a sudden, like that zone that I experienced, it was gone. I would feel like I was hit by a bus or a truck at the end of every day in my practice. I was 28 years old. And I was just like, oh my God, this is my life. Every day I got to feel like this at the end of my day. Like, this is not possible. So I have to meditate to feel human again, right? And so he said, I told him my lunch thing, and he said, I said, "I need one of those pills, like the ones that you roll, like, I want one of those. Fix this blood pressure and help me." And he said, no, you don't need any pills. I said, he said, "Go home, have a nice warm cooked meal in the middle of the day. You'll never have high blood pressure again." I was like, come on, really? Eat a big lunch? Can I do that and have a pill? And he said, "No, you're going to have to just eat a big lunch." I was like, oh my God, okay. So thank you. And so I started doing that, and my blood pressure dramatically changed. I was so fascinated by that. I did a little pilot study with my patients in my practice at that time. We published a little pilot study, and turned out that when they ate a big lunch, their blood pressure got better. And I was like, wow. This is really crazy. So that was my beginning journey into circadian medicine. And in Ayurveda, they have an understanding of the biological clocks and the circadian rhythms. And there's Vata and Pitta and Kapha times of day. How many have no idea what that is? Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Okay, so in Ayurveda, it's really simple. This is the simplest description, I hope, for Ayurveda. There's three governing principles in nature. Vata is like air, Pitta is like fire, and Kapha is like earth and water. But think of them like seasons. Vata is winter. It's cold and dry. If you have a lot of Vata in your constitution, you're always looking for covers and sweaters. You're cold all the time. Anybody feel like that? If you have a lot of Pitta, you have a lot of summer in your body type, which means that you're throwing off the covers and you never wear a sweater and you're always hot, not cold. Anybody like that? Okay. If you're married to that person, you got a problem. And then if you're a Kapha body type, which means cough or to stick together, it's like the spring. And in the spring, it rains a lot, and the earth is muddy. The earth holds on to more water, so that body type holds on to more water. They're more kapha, they're more congested, they're heavier set, they're easier going, they're more calm. Everybody thinks they're the heavy, fat ones, and they're bad. So it's too bad for you. But I'm telling you, we're all going to die someday. And we might even come back again in a different life. And there's a whole bunch of lines you have to stay on for this and for that. And then there's the body type line. And there's going to be a huge line of people on the Vata line waiting to become a Vata body type. Because they're like the artists and they have sensitivity and they're super heightened aware. And then there's a lot of people on that Pitta line. They all want to be competitive and driven and millionaires and change the world and become politicians and lie, cheat, and steal. Not really kidding. And there's a lot of people on that line. And there's like nobody on the Kapha line. Zero is empty. So here, I'm going to tell you what to do. Go on the Kapha line. Just go there. Don't ask any questions. Just go there. And when they say, why are you on this line? Everybody's on that line. Just say, John sent me. And you're going to be great because Kapha is silent. It's like the ocean. It's still. It holds on to more water, more calm, more silence. They have the natural ability to handle the crazy stress. Vata is air. It's moving all the time. Pitta is fire. It's burning things up. Kapha is calm and still. Just keep that body type in balance. You're going to thank me someday, okay? Next life, I'll have a lot of hair. You won't even recognize me, but I'm sure that we'll feel each other out. So there are natural cycles in nature, and these cycles of spring, summer, and winter are always starting with spring. Nature's new year is the spring, right? The rains come, the mud comes, the earth becomes soft, seeds germinate. It's the beginning of the cycle. So every cycle in nature starts with spring. In our body, we have life cycles. Babies are in the springtime of their life. They make mucus for a living, right? They make congestion for a living. They can roll downstairs and do it again because they're super elastic. They've got all this flexibility. The next phase of your life is the fire, the summer phase, the Pitta phase. And now you're out trying to make a living and pay for college for your kids and all this stuff. And you're driving to be successful in the world. And then you have the Vata time, the air. As you get older, you dry out a little bit. Your joints become a little frail. And you start to get a little thinner. You're in the Vata time of your life, but this is where ether and air and akasha and space predominate. And studies done at UCLA found that when not only in the Vata time of your life and the latter part of your life are you more interested in finding God before it's too late, you have the physiological and neurological capacity to refine this human instrument and thin the veil between the physical and the spiritual. In other words, we are more equipped in the last part of our life, thank goodness, because I'm there, to actually have a more successful spiritual process, which is really quite beautiful. The seasons, spring is nature's new year. Nature always provides the antidote to the season in its harvest. So in the spring, it's rainy, muddy, congested. Is there any pasta and pizza being harvested in the spring? No, it's a low carb, low pasta, low pizza harvest. In the spring, it's an austere harvest. It's a roots harvest. It's a leafy green, spring green harvest. It's the antidote to the congestion of that season. The summer, when it's hot, the harvest is what? Fruits and vegetables, very cooling. And in the fall, we have foods that are designed to cool you at the end of the summer, like apples and pomegranates and watermelon, to get the excess heat out of your body. But then the foods that will last, the nuts and the seeds, the squirrels are storing them because they're higher protein and higher fat to give you the insulation and the antidote to the dryness of winter. So in nature, there's 3 harvests. There's a spring harvest, summer harvest, and a fall harvest or winter eating. I know that there's 4 harvests. I did write a book called The 3-Season Diet that nobody read because they all thought I didn't know there were 4 seasons, but I'm telling you now, I did know that, but nobody knew that I knew that. So they said, that's stupid. But when you actually understand that when you're eating the foods in season, you're aligning your biological clocks with nature's circadian rhythms. In the food, if you're eating the food in that season, there are different microbes from one season to the next to the next. The soil microbes change from one season to the next to the next. The hunter-gatherer Hadza tribes, their gut bugs were dramatically different in the spring than they were in the fall. They had bugs in their gut in the spring for fat and fiber as their source of fuel, called actinobacteria. And they had bugs in the fall called bacteroidetes, which are really good at getting sugar and fruits and starches out of your gut into your blood to give you energy. So the fuel supply changes from one season to the next, right? Like enzymes for digesting sugars called amylase increases in your body and mind at the end of the summer when the grains and the fruits are being harvested. We're circadian beings, even after all this ignoring the fact that we are supposed to eat in a seasonal way. The bugs in the spring help to decongest you. The bugs in the summer help dissipate heat. The bugs in the fall for the winter help boost your immunity. There are what are called bacterial endophytes on the foods that you eat that support the intelligence, the immunity, the potency, the benefits of that plant. Certain bugs are particularly attracted to certain roots, and they are specifically related to those seasons. They're synergistic. So when you eat the right food at the right time of the year, you're inoculating your gut with a stable of bugs for that season. The foods that you're harvesting and eating at that time of the year are getting a certain amount of light because they're harvested at a certain time of the year. And that light changes from one season to the next to the next. So if you're eating foods out of season and you're eating foods in the winter that were harvested in Chile in the middle of the summer that had long days and short nights, the amount of photons, the amount of light that that food has gleaned over its period of growing is completely different energy than the food that is actually harvested in the fall or in the late fall for winter eating. So it's these photons of light that are actually charging our food. And it's these foods, those photons of light provide a specific signal for the mitochondria to function in the right kind of way, because you need more mitochondria, more energy production during the long days of summer and different amount of energy during the winter months. We are, again, circadian beings, and we should begin to act like them. So the bugs in the soil change, the bugs in your gut change, the food should change from season to season. All you got to do it is go to my website at lifespa.com. You don't have to read the book. Type in winter grocery list, print it out, circle the foods on the winter grocery list or the spring grocery list or the summer grocery list that you like, and give yourself permission to eat more of those foods. We even produce a seasonal 3-season eating guide where you can actually get that in your inbox, and it tells you what food to eat every month of the year for the entire year for free. We put that out every month, and we give great articles about it. It's kind of really cool, just to get you back into rhythm. It's really quite beautiful, but it's very simple. Okay, so now I want to talk about what I really want to talk about. which is the frequencies of light. Let's take a deeper dive into that. In the morning, between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock in the morning is, again, the start of another cycle. It starts with kapha, which is heavier. Then it goes to pitta, which is the middle of the day when your digestion's super strong. And it goes into the afternoon when your vata, your brain, your nervous system is actually supposed to be stronger. So if you're falling asleep at 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 in the afternoon, we got a little bit of a problem. We're going to fix that, so don't worry. We'll get there. So first thing in the morning, before the sunrise, there's something called the blue hour, where if you wake up before the sun, you'll notice that the sun hasn't risen yet, but there's a blue, beautiful crimson blue, almost violet blue, that covers the entire sky. That blue light is what helps to block and stop your melatonin production and wake you up. That's the blue hour before the sunrise. The blue light is a very fast frequency of light. In the electromagnetic spectrum, you have the visual light spectrum, and then you have on the faster side, you have blue light, it's a faster frequency. On the slower side, you have red light. If you keep going slower, you have infrared light. And then you have microwaves and radio waves over here on the slower frequencies. Over on the faster frequencies, on the other side of blue light, you have UV light, the stuff we paint sunscreen on to protect ourselves from. And then you have X-rays and gamma rays over here on the super fast rays. Generally, the faster the ray, the more difficult it is for it to penetrate the atmosphere, particularly when the sun is low in the sky. When it's directly above us, you have more of that penetration. So in the morning, the blue light is a faster frequency, so it doesn't penetrate that well. So it gets scattered, and you see it across the sky, which is why we have a blue sky. And that light blocks your melatonin. And then, when the sun peaks over the horizon, something else happens. The sky turns red and yellow and orange. And because the red light and the infrared light are slower frequencies, they penetrate the atmosphere. And the UV radiation, which is a faster frequency, so-called damaging, we'll talk about that, that is blocked. So during the morning hours, during sunrise, you have an exclusive red and infrared light experience with no damaging UV radiation. It's a magical period of time. And UV radiation, because it's a slower waveform, penetrates deeply into your tissues. It even pushes through your bones in your brain and goes into your skull, and it warms you from the inside out. In Ayurveda, we call those morning hours the kapha time of day. Kapha is muscular strength, stamina, endurance, immunity. You should be digging ditches and plowing fields with that muscular strength before it gets too hot. So our body is designed to be more physically active in those morning hours. And the infrared light and the red light that penetrates our tissues increases the collagen production, strengthens your muscles. When I wrote my first book, Body, Mind, Sport, it was about the whole runner's high, nose breathing, and exercise thing. I ended up getting invited to go to the Soviet Union, and before they became whatever they are now, they were the Soviet Union, and I went to their physical culture and sports and worked with their athletes and their trainers, and they said, we do all of our muscular training in the morning hours because that's when the muscles are stronger. People who exercise regularly, 75% of them do their workouts in the morning time. This is the time the body's designed to be ready to do physical activity before it gets too hot. They did a study with the Tisimi tribe in Bolivia in the Amazon, the Hadza tribe in Tanzania, the Sans Bushmen, and they took light meters and they put them on their body and they kind of let them just go wherever they go and see what happens and when they get the most light or the least amount of light. And they found that they were there for the sunrise, like almost all humans are, except for us humans, American humans, or Westernized humans, I guess to say. And they had light exposure all the way till about noon, and then they were not in the light. Sort of interesting. So they got the perfect amount of light that they need. In America, the average American spends 90% of their time indoors. 5, 10 years ago, when we had incandescent light bulbs, the ones that would burn your finger if you touched it, it was okay because that heat from the light bulbs had infrared light in them. But now, as those are becoming illegal in America, we have LED lights, which are blue lights, and they don't get hot, and there's zero infrared light. So now we are having what's called an infrared light deficiency. And infrared light is the most critical light for healing the human body. It is the one responsible for taking care of your inflammation, deep repair. That kapha frequency of light, that infrared and red light, activates the mitochondrial energy. It activates an enzyme in your skin and your cells called the cytochrome C oxidase enzyme, which triggers your mitochondria to make energy. I know they said you don't do a photosynthesis thing because only plants do that, but turns out that infrared light is the responsible for making energy, the ATP in our cells. That's who does it. And like I said before, the whole DNA damage thing, okay, I get all this infrared light in the morning, I'm making all this energy, who's going to shovel out all that waste? Because that causes DNA damage. Well, the infrared light also activates that same cytochrome C oxidase enzyme to produce an antioxidant to completely swab up all that free radical damage for you. And that enzyme also decreases as you age, just like the ATP energy production decreases as you age, and the DNA damage increases as you age. And guess what the name of that antioxidant is called? Anyone know? It's actually called melatonin. You've heard of it? It's the one that puts you to sleep. And you're like, wait, melatonin puts me to sleep. It doesn't have anything to do with DNA damage. Well, the melatonin that puts you to sleep is only 10% of the melatonin in your body, only 10%. 90% of the melatonin in your body is made inside your cell because of the infrared light activating that enzyme to make that melatonin as an antioxidant to clean up all that free radical damage. And because as we age, we produce less melatonin, we produce less ATP, we have all this age-related unnecessary aging factors because of that. But if you were to increase your exposure to that infrared light and get outside in the morning when you're looking at an exclusive red and infrared light, studies show that you produce more melatonin during the day to swab up the free radical and energy producing damage, and you also produce more melatonin at night to give you the deeper sleep. But because 90% of the American population, or the average American spends 90% of their time indoors, we're not getting that. So my point here is that what's beautiful about Ayurveda, they said, well, the kapha time of day you should do this, and the pitta time of day you should do that. But that's like sort of a little bit dogmatic, like why should I do that? It's because there's kapha, like what is that? But now we know that that kapha quality of muscular strength, anti-inflammation, building collagen to protect your skin from the coming UV radiation, which comes in the middle of the day when the sun is very hot. The infrared light provides protection for you for that. It boosts your immunity, makes you stronger. So this is the kapha quality. It's such a beautiful quality, and it comes from the natural occurring red and infrared light. And the rule of thumb is that if you want to get that exclusive exposure to that red and infrared light, as long as the sun, the shadow that the sun is making on you is longer than you are tall, right? That means the sun is low enough in the sky to give you exclusive red and infrared light with no UV radiation, okay? So that's why you want to be outside in the morning and be there for that sunrise for the first few hours of the day and let that sun hit you. It can go through your clothes. It goes through. This is why the deer and the cattle and the elk and during the winter months, and humans were able to do this too. Be outside in the freezing cold. Like, how do these elk stay out there? Like, we have elk where we live, and they're like, it's frigid outside, and they're like chilling. It's the infrared light that penetrates deep into their tissues and warms them from the inside out. And it's it heals them, creates anti-inflammation, it boosts immunity, it does so much. So we definitely need that, and without the incandescent lights, we're sort of in a bit of a pickle, so you have to make sure you get it from the sun. Now, as the sun goes into the middle of the sky, the UV radiation kicks in. UV radiation is bad for us. We put sunscreen on to protect it, right? Well, it turns out that the UV radiation isn't so bad after all. In 1903, UVA radiation, the one that won the Nobel Prize in 1903 for healing skin conditions and boosting immunity and things like lupus, won the Nobel Prize. UVA, the one we paint all the sunscreen on to block desperately. And that's why back in the pictures of the early hospitals in the early 1900s, so all the beds were on the balconies. Remember seeing pictures like that? That's because they would roll everybody out on the bed outside and get them the sun. And the UVA radiation actually what provided a healing effect. UV radiation increases metabolism. Vitamin UVB, which makes your vitamin D, which is obviously really important, is a hormone, in fact. But even when they take the UV radiation, UVB radiation, and they take away the vitamin D benefits, there's so many more benefits from the UVA, the UVB, and the UVC. It's really critical that we get some of that light as well. Now, our hunter-gatherers, they got that morning light till around 10 o'clock, which was mostly infrared and red. And then what did they get in the middle of the day? They got around noon, they finished up. They had a couple hours of UV radiation, and they were gone. In Ayurveda, there's something called Agnihotra. Anybody heard of that? It's like the Homa. It's a fire ceremony that's traditionally done in India at the sunrise. And what's really interesting about that is that they do that at the sunrise and the sunset. And I was involved with a research project trying to do research on why and what that staring and doing a ritual, staring at a yellow flame at the moment of sunrise, what would that actually do? And it turns out, which is really interesting, I thought, was that early hominids, before Homo sapiens, they didn't have color vision. So it wasn't the blue light that blocked the melatonin and the orange and red light that actually boosted cortisol and got the body going, because they didn't see red light or blue light or orange light or green light. They didn't see it. They were colorblind. So the research shows that the early hominids and us to this day, it's not just the blue light, it's the contrast between that blue light that floods the sky in the blue hour and the red and the orange sunrise creates a contrast of the visual light spectrum of blue on one side a lot, and of course the red and the orange and the yellow on the other side. And it's that contrast that actually created a turning on the biological clocks for the day and turning off the biological clocks for the night. Because when you're staring at that yellow flame, you're enhancing that contrast. And studies show that when you do that on a regular basis, the research that I was sort of involved in showed that it actually helped people recover from addiction and treated a host of psychological problems because it, again, aligned biological clocks. It's almost like synchronizing your watches to make sure, okay, this is the exact moment when the sun is rising. I'm creating this massive contrast between the blue and the yellow and the red, and that contrast plus I'm looking at it right at the sunrise, telling me this is the moment that daytime clocks turn on and my metabolism turns on. And if you can align your body with that kind of precision, only good things are going to happen. So then we go back to the middle of the day, and we have, more UV radiation that increases metabolism, turns on your digestion, gets your body ready to digest your food. So we all know this is when we should all be eating our food in the middle of the day, like my story about when my blood pressure. All I did was eat when my body said you're supposed to eat, and the cooks were there cooking my food, and all of my problems, my blood pressure problems, got significantly better, just taking time to eat the food at that time of day. There are so many studies that show if you eat food, the same calories for breakfast and lunch and the same amount of calories for lunch and dinner, there's a dramatic improvement in weight, in metabolic syndrome, which is like high blood pressure, high blood sugar, high cholesterol, high extra weight around your belly. All that gets significantly better if you just front load the food. In one study, when they ate 50% of their food after 6 o'clock in the evening, compared to people who ate it in the early part of the day, there was a 23% increased risk in weight gain and a 19% increased risk of diabetes when you had food after 6 o'clock at night. So we are circadian beings, and we want to be thinking like them, the very, very best we can. So that middle day, that UV radiation is really important, but it's a matter of dose. And if you had the infrared light in the morning, that would give you protection for the UV damage that might potentially happen in the afternoon. And that's why people who are out in the fields and doing, harvesting crops and things, they don't get melanoma, they don't get skin cancer, because they're living in harmony with they have the infrared light, which gives them that collagen protection. And then, of course, in the afternoon during sunset, you have another dose of infrared light, because the sun is now low in the sky. The UV radiation dials down, and you have a healing for any potential damage that was there. It was nature's plan, right? So that's the pitta time of day, that fire time of day. Eat your food, cook your food, digest, increase metabolism, more energy, more vitality. The blue light is more pervasive because the sun is in the middle of the sky and you have so much blue light, which increases cognitive function and energy and vitality. And then when you take the red and the blue and the green light, that converts into what's called clear light. What we're actually seeing in here, which we don't see any color in the stuff between me and you, that's RBG, red, blue, green. You pick red, blue, green light, put it together, you get clear light. Isn't that cool? So this is all red, blue, and green. Now, if I had more cones in my eyes, I would see all that beautiful stuff, but I just see clear. And you look good, but But if I had more cones, you would look better. It'd be like psychedelic. But isn't that neat that that's the red, blue, green is what we actually are seeing most of the time. So then in the afternoon, this is this crazy time, we call it the Vata time, between 2 and 6, where everybody needs a cup of coffee, or they need a Starbucks, or they need chocolate to get through the day, right? But in Ayurveda, this is a time where your brain should be the most strong. And you should be the most clear and the most creative. And the white light, the RBG light, has been shown to increase cognitive function and mental clarity and energy. But if you didn't put enough gas in your tank in the middle of the day, when the UV radiation is telling your digestion you can cook this big meal, and then you go in the afternoon and you didn't put any gas in your tank and your brain goes, where's my fuel? You're going to crash and burn. And your brain's going to go, I know how to get back up there. There's coffee and there's sugar and there's chips and there's candy, all kinds of things that get me back up on that mountain. I want to be there. So you're going to start craving stuff that you know is not good for you. And what goes up starts to come crashing down. And you spend the rest of your day going up and down and up and down. And this is what happens during the Vata time if you didn't put the gas in your tank in the middle of the day. And that stress of up and down, which happened to me. I was feeling like I was hit like a bus at 5 o'clock at night when I was trying to finish my practice. I was so exhausted. So I was craving whatever I could get my hands on. And depending on how you're genetically wired to break down, you put that kind of stress in your system, you're going to break down. For me, it was blood pressure, could be extra weight around your belly, could be high blood pressure, could be high blood sugar, it could be metabolic syndrome, which is the epidemic of our time. I wrote an article about the fact that cholesterol levels, blood pressure levels, high blood sugar levels, when you look at the cause of all of those, it's stress. We know that if you're under stress, being chased by a bear, maybe it's not that extreme, but that's how our body responds to the constant, I gotta do, I gotta go here, go to here, that constant rev. The body thinks There's a bear chasing me. I'm going to need more sugar in the blood to get up that tree to save my life. I'm going to need more cholesterol in the blood to make more hormones to get myself to save my life because there's a bear chasing me all day long every day. Any extra fuel I get, I'm putting it under the mattress to save it for a rainy day because I don't know if this war is going to ever end, so I gain more weight. And when you actually meditate, yoga breathe, which happens here, I was so blown away because I was like, every patient I see, they're healthy, they eat really well, but their doctor wants to put them on a statin. And so I wrote an article digging into the actual science. And when you do yoga and breathing and meditation and study after study after study, it shows it lowers your cholesterol, lowers your blood sugar. It helps you lose weight more significantly. It just completely eradicates metabolic syndrome. So the yoga and the breathing and meditation is one piece of it, but also we want to align the biological clocks. And during the heat of the day, when UV radiation is the most hot, what does that UV radiation do to a lake or to the ocean? What happens when you put a lot of heat on a body of water? It creates evaporation, right? And evaporation creates what? Currents and wind. And it's that wind that actually creates vata. That's why it gets windy in the afternoon and it's super calm in the morning. Because of the UV radiation that literally creates heat, that actually creates the vata time of day. And when that's happening, the DNA damage at the end of the day is the most predominant at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, smack dab in the middle of the vata time of day, according to the research, which is pretty amazing, I think. I mean, this is a little nerdy, but it's really kind of cool to understand these cycles. And then in the afternoon, what's happening is the UV radiation is starting to dial down. The sun's going lower in the sky, and the infrared light is coming back up. And that infrared light is starting to heal you and warm you and get you ready for the evening. That red light of the sunset is going to allow melatonin to be produced, because red and orange light actually allow melatonin to be produced. It's the blue light that blocks it. So what happens to the blue light in the afternoon or on the sunset? Where does that go? Why isn't that blocking melatonin? This is, again, really kind of a little bit nerdy, and I was like, wait a minute, it doesn't make any sense. There's no difference between sunrise and sunset. Why does one block melatonin, and why does the other one allow melatonin? Does it not make any sense to you? Well, it turns out that in the morning, after a whole night, is the lake calm or still? Are the winds generally calm throughout the night? In the morning, it's very peaceful? And generally speaking, are the winds kind of more turbulent during the afternoon? So what turns out is that in the morning, after a night of stillness, there's no dust being picked up in the atmosphere. And it turns out in the afternoon, because of the winds from the UV radiation that create the heat, that create the evaporation, that create the wind that picks up dust, makes a beautiful sunset because all the light reflects off of it, but it blocks the higher frequencies of blue light that get blocked in the atmosphere, and even more blocked because of the dust in the atmosphere. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is really what happens on this planet? It's the dust the wind has been doing that from the beginning of time. It's not just like pollution dust, probably maybe helps a little bit. But that's what's been going on forever and ever. So it's the dust that blocks the blue light from blocking the melatonin, which allows the dust actually enhances the refraction of the red and the orange and the yellow light, which allows melatonin to be produced. And you have this incredible, beautiful sunset that actually allows melatonin to be produced. And those are the times of day that the frequencies of light change and create the vata, the pitta, the kapha times of day that we align ourselves with. Of course, there's the evening times of day. There's between 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock, and these cycles repeat themselves. There's another kapha time, which is why at this time of night, sort of the kapha time of night, if I wasn't such a wonderful speaker, you'd all be asleep. I'm just joking. But it's a time of night where we probably want to go to sleep because it's that time where the body's settling down. And then at 10 o'clock at night, you get a second wind. You want to go change the world, get on your computer and, fix everything. And that's the pitta time of night. This is when we want to do everything. The liver becomes active. And studies show that herbs and medicines are very circadian in nature. If you want to detoxify, like chemotherapy drugs work 40% better at nighttime than they do at the daytime. If you take an aspirin at nighttime to help protect you from blood pressure and pain and risk of stroke, it has a powerful benefit, but it has no benefit if you take it in the morning for those conditions. So 56 or 7% of the medications are circadian in nature. Statins, now they're time released, but the early statins, you had to take them at night to get the liver cleaning benefit. And the enzymes for digestion are active during the daytime, but the enzymes for detoxification take place at night. So the janitor comes in at nighttime and wants to clean windows and wash floors. But if you're up eating ice cream at late in the evening, or watching a late night movie, or whatever, the janitor comes in, or you had a late dinner, the janitor comes in and goes, "Oh, guys, I'm so sorry, you guys are still eating. I'll come back tomorrow." And then, of course, the next day they come, you're having another dinner late, and you're watching another movie, eating ice cream, and they go, "Oh, I'll come back tomorrow." And the body just keeps building more trash. The janitor never gets to come, and you have a real problem. So this is the time the body's doing its deep rejuvenation. The melatonin is being produced at this time to detoxify you. And again, it is your body's number one antioxidant. Weirdly, your body chooses to make that as the most powerful antioxidant it can muster, which is really quite amazing, I think. So that's something that's we should be thinking about. So if you were kind of up at that time, you lose the detoxification, and night after night after night, you become more toxic, and that becomes a problem. So think about this for a second. Let's say you went to bed tonight at 12 o'clock, and you woke up tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock in the morning. How would you feel? Feel like you might have slept too much, a little bit too much? Let's say the next night you went to bed at 8 o'clock at night, and you woke up at 6 o'clock that next morning. How would you feel in comparison, better or worse? Better. The difference was when you got the sleep. They were both 10 hours. Only difference is when you got it. So when you get the sleep and when you wake up, all makes a difference. So think about getting yourself to sleep at night early, getting yourself up for the sunrise, and begin to align your biological clocks. Because if you can start to do that, eat at the right time, get up at the right time, sleep at the right time, life starts to go merrily, merrily, merrily down the stream without feeling like life is a struggle. All right, so there you have it, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
I would like to thank very much Dr. John Douillard for this wonderful talk. Let's give him a big hand.